Happy holidays, watercolor card artists. I'm so happy to be here today, and thank you for watching this wonderful video. I wanted to do a video on how I make quick Christmas cards or holiday cards, and I will show you how I like to paint kind of fast-ish impressionistic female and male cardinals, and how to, this one is a birch tree. I'm also doing some fun little like whimsical cards and motifs just to kind of get you in the Christmas spirit. So what you need is a couple of 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch watercolor paper. 140 pounds would be perfect. And what you see is I'm making the wreath, and I'm just taking a damp sponge and I'm just adding some green and some blue, and I'm just kind of making a circle. I really don't have much of a plan, and then I'm just kind of going in and moving in that water just to make some pine like needles, the shape of the pine needles. And then I'm going to go back in. This is really just called color blocking, and I'm just going to go in and kind of move that pigment around so it has a shape of a wreath, right? Wreath. And it's just kind of fun, and I find it actually very therapeutic when I do this. I usually have some music going on, and I'm just gonna play with my shapes. And so there you go. It's pretty simple. And then I'm gonna just clean up any edges that I don't want to dry. I am gonna add, this is Indian red, because it was what was on my palette and I didn't really feel like I needed to change the red, but this is Indian red, and I'm just making some holly berries, or some berries that you would see in the fall, early winter. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just making little circles, and like little 3 clusters circles. It's kind of simple. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to go back in with my green, and I am going to then make little like fur marks is what I call it, but it's really just cross hatching. And I'm going to make my pine boughs, my pine needles. And so it's kind of fun, and it's really, and I'm just using I'm just flicking my brush. You can kind of see it, and this is doubled speed, but I do try to work fast. And this wreath really only took me about 5 minutes to paint, so it was really a fun one. And I just kind of make the pine boughs wherever I needed, and the pine needles wherever I needed. And you'll kind of see a little bit. Sometimes there'll be more blue or more green, because I like to switch them up a little bit and not have the same wherever I'm at. And then in just a second you're going to see that it is about done. It's perfect, almost. But then I'll save that to let it dry, and then once it's dry I'll stamp it. Alright, so for this one is really fun. This one is a Christmas tree, and I'm just kind of making a really nice green, and I added 3 dots because I wanted to have a guideline, and I'm literally just making little brush marks. I'm not actually painting, I'm more like stamping my brush on the paper, so you get that really cute, well, I say cute, but that really concise brush mark, brush stroke look. And then I'm going to add a little bit more green and a little bit more of that blue towards the bottom. And then I'm just going to kind of empty the edges out so it just runs. And now I can add a little bit more yellow. While the yellow is on the blue, it actually like it separates the blue, so I get this really pretty like light glow effect, which is really fun. And then for extra fun, I thought, oh, I'll splatter, and it did work, and I like the splatter, but I really wanted to play with it, and so I played with the background. And you just see me splattering, and then that's with a clean wet brush, and I'm just cleaning that up a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of that blue down to the base, and that will be like when it would be snowy outside, that's how the tree would look. So it's such a fun technique. And then it's pretty much done. I can let it dry. For this one, I am going to make little asterisks all over it, and I'm doing clusters of 3. This is just blue. I believe I'm using Daft Blue, so a very deep and it's either Daft Blue or Prussian Blue. I think they're about one and the same depending on the brand you use. But I'm just making little asterisks. These remind me of like a Christmas night or a winter's night where you see the stars and they're just all over. And it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be like a motif. And this is a great mindfulness project where you can just really just be a part of your art and just make those little marks all over. My rhyme or reason is I do 3 asterisk clusters at a time, and then I'll do the same thing with the yellow. I'll do 3 asterisk clusters at a time until I see it kind of filling up. And sometimes you'll see that I'll only do 1 at a time, but then I'll go back in and add 2 more. But it's just a fun design motif. And I thought, well, yellow and blue would be so nice for friends. Anyways, I'm just playing around here. And now I did decide to do a little bit of splattering of yellow. Do you know what happens when you get yellow and blue? You get green. So I did not want to add too much splatter. In fact, I decided to leave it to just the yellow splatter. We'll let that dry. And now I'm going to do that same technique, but I'm going to be a little bit more strategic on where I'm placing my yellow. So I'm actually starting with my yellow first. And then I'm just going to make my little asterisks. The idea here is that there's a lot of room for blue and a little bit of yellow. I am definitely an Epcot fan, and so these these motifs definitely remind me of Epcot. And I don't have a rhyme or reason on where I put them. I just like to put them scattered all over my paper. And then the blue, I'm just going to fill in the rest of the paper with blue asterisks, with blue stars. And sometimes I make them bigger, sometimes I make them smaller. I try not to make them all the same, all at the same time. So I'm just adding the asterisks. This brush that I'm using is actually a dagger brush, so it has a really long tip, and so it's really fun to work with, and I can get lines really thick or really thin, and so you'll see some of my lines being really thin and really thick, and I really love the repetition that comes with this. This is such a peaceful time that just the movement. And it's not like writing. It's so peaceful, and it really is therapeutic for me. But anyways, the inspiration that came from this was the Spaceship Earth ball at Epcot, where all the colors are blue, and then there's a little bit of white or yellow lights. And I thought, well, how fun would that be? I don't know if anyone would catch that, but how fun. Anyways, so there's the last one. And then this one, I'm actually going to use totally 2 different colors. This one is Shadow Violet, and Shadow Violet is my favorite brown when I just want to do something kind of fun and, I don't know, trendy, I guess is a word, but I'm kind of starting, I'm just using a piece of paper and I'm adding some paint to that paper just to give an idea for birch trees. It's just little lines, it's very abstract at this point, but it will eventually not feel abstract. And so I do use a kind of a nice little line, and I'm just kind of making what I think would look like a birch tree, and then I'll go in and add little branches from the birch trees. Again, this is a representation. I'm not looking for it to look totally perfect, and so that's where it's just kind of fun. But this technique really works because you just need a little bit of pop of everything, and with the Shadow Violet you get some beautiful teals and almost a little bit of pinky color with the Shadow Violet. It's just it's a dream to work with. And so once I feel like I got a pretty good tree motif down, I always like to add a little bit of splatter. I think it adds to the atmosphere of the of the birch trees. All right, so you'll just see me. I'm just kind of like doodling with my watercolor, and I'm trying to decide how I want to paint my cardinals on my palette because it's just easier that way. And I really like how that worked. So I'm going to try that again, maybe a bigger one and a smaller one. And I feel like I pretty much got the muscle memory down. So that's what I'm doing. And I recommend just doodling your birds, and if you're not for sure, just keep practicing. So I'm also making those 3 that I started with were males. I wanted to add some shadow violet to the females so they're not so bright, and that is what I'm doing. But I'm kind of just making a little circle with a little triangle on top of that circle and then a little tail. Like that's really how I paint my cardinals. It's not perfect, it doesn't have to be. So I'm using this reindeer silhouette from Tailored Expressions, and I'm just using 2 stamps from that set, like a Christmas one and a Season's Greeting one. And I'm using ink that matches the pigment, if that makes sense. So I'm using brown on this one just to get a good look. And there we go, there's one down. And I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm just cleaning my stamp. And I'm going to probably use that nice pretty blue that I have. This is corn blue from Tailored Expressions. And sometimes I have to have 2 impressions on it, or I let it sit on the cards, the watercolor paper for just a little bit. Anyways, and now this one, I'm going to choose a different one, a different sentiment. I'm just going to put it on there, make sure that it's lined up right. And then I'm going to use a green one, or actually this is still blue. This is blue corn from Tailored Expressions. We wish you a Merry Christmas. So perfect. This one I decided I'm going to do something different with. And I decided that I like the sentiment, but I don't like where it's placed. So I'm going to reposition it to where I want it to be, and I like it more like there. And then I'm going to take my blue and ink and stamp it. All right, then for this one I'm actually going to get a piece of white paper that is cut to about 1 inch by 4 inches and stamp that onto. If you are new to using a MISTI stamp positioning tool, I highly recommend one for watercolor cards, and then you don't have to handwrite your sentiments. You can just use a stamp, which is what I love. And then we are about done. I'm putting my stamp away, and those are the finished cards. If you found this video to be helpful, I would sure love a thumbs up, and I would love to know which one you liked the best. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy watercoloring!